From the kitchen of the cabin,
It's the 5 Games for Doomsday news.
with Ben and Steve.
Well, Ben, it's that time of year again when the temperature starts going down to a cool 22 degrees Celsius.
Whoa. See, I remember that time Trump held up a snowball and said global warming doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He was right.
It's just, patterns in the weather. I mean, I've heard, like in years past, you used to have an Indian summer. I don't know if you're allowed to call it that anymore.
It's India. It's about a country, isn't it?
Yeah, but still. People don't know that, and then they get mad at you.
Yeah, because people are idiots, right?
Yeah. And it would be like an unseasonably warm October. Like this time of year, about
India's
this warm.
southern hemisphere, isn't it? At least part of it.
I don't think any of it.
Isn't it?
I don't think so.
I didn't pass geography at school, though.
I don't think any of it is southern
Goa?
hemisphere. No. So,
How about...
I'm not looking at a map right now, but I'm pretty sure that the southern tip of India is still further north than Singapore, which is just above the equator. Now I'm going to look at a map.
What do you prefer, Staya or Goa?
This is exciting for the listeners, isn't it?
Do you think there's a place called Staya?
Somewhere.
Are you allowed to actually... Are you allowed to actually stay in Goa for any kind of...
Yeah, so what I said is accurate. You can see here that India is like well above the equator. It's northern hemisphere. Although we often refer to the global south, and I think people include India in that formulation, but
so I'm
not completely positive,
right
about that.
I mean, clearly, geography is not my area of expertise.
What is your area of expertise?
Well, I was just about to get because who am I to talk about self-assessment never works. So you're looking at me now. We're sat across the table.
I'm staring at you.
It's a typical 28 degrees on an October morning, late October, mind you.
Are you saying it's unusual for the temperature in Berlin at the end of October to be 37 degrees?
I think it's perfectly normal for a balmy 48 degree day. Anyway, so
we're all gonna die.
What's my skills? What would you say? My area of skill?
I think raconteurship.
Okay, you think so?
I think you're a pretty good raconteur.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm great at it.
No?
See, I'm quite good at the bon mot, but I don't think I'm good at the plot.
Badinage.
I'm pretty good at badinage.
I think I'd give you high points in badinage. Yeah. Imprecation.
Yeah, pretty good at imprecating people.
Yeah. What else? That expression, a friend in need is a friend indeed?
Yeah.
You're the best friend I have.
The dearest friend you've ever met.
Yeah, like the high marks in friendship.
So any kind of constructive skills rather than talking bollocks. Because basically
you're not really good at building things.
Blagging and talking bollocks is basically what you've said thus far.
Are you denying that you're not skilled?
Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm great at blagging and talking bollocks.
Can you imagine if you could get imagine if you're looking at job descriptions on LinkedIn. Right? And it's just we need this person to be a top performer in blagging and talking bollocks.
Yeah.
Which I think essentially is what most executives are doing most of the time anyway, right?
I just don't have the douchery. If you'd attach my blagging and talking bollocks and a douche, I'd be your boss, basically. Yeah. And you'd be going, oh, Ben, is it okay if I quangle the man candle? That's
whatever that means.
That's a computer.
Whatever that means.
That's a computer engineering term. You might not be familiar with it.
I mean, I've been a manager myself for so long. I don't remember all the technical details like you.
Oh, Ben, is it all right if my team glangles the burger?
Glangles.
Yeah, to glangle.
Look it up.
The fact that you don't know the verb to glangle is deeply, deeply concerning considering your job.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. What are some skills that you would like to be said to be good at?
All right. I'd like people to say, oh, well, Ben, he's got a silky voice. Mm-hmm. That's good for voiceovers.
So proficient in diction?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So let's add diction to the list.
Diction, yeah. I'd like people to say, oh, he's an entertaining writer as well.
Entertaining writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say...
I don't want to be a clever writer, I want to be an entertaining writer.
Yeah, so when I'm reading one of your articles, in tabletop gaming, and I'm this is me reading the article. You ready? I'm gonna do an impression.
Okay, so for the listeners, Steve's holding an imaginary magazine, but it looks more like a book, really. It's a magazine. Can you... He's holding an imaginary magazine, that's better. That's it. He's laughing at my article there. What line was it?
So that was like somewhere in the middle where you like compare a board game to some like abstract principle that has nothing to do with board games, and then go on for like 5 paragraphs not talking about board games, mostly talking about yourself.
Yeah, great. I mean, you've boiled it down to my skill set.
What else though? What else?
You know, I just like people to say, you know, Ben. That's how you people talk.
So we often talk about soft skills.
I'm doing an impression of you.
Yeah.
I'm doing an impression of the middle classes.
That's me. I'm middle class.
You're part of the middle classes. Ben, like Ben, you know. Like Ben, he's just a good guy. Ben.
So that's how a middle class.
That's how the middle class people.
Which class are you again?
I'm from the working classes. Thank
you. What is your work?
I am an actor and a writer and a voiceover artist. Did you
bring your pickaxe with you?
Yes, I did. Look at these hands.
these soft, milky white hands.
It's not just fucking manual labour in the working classes. It's also being on the dole and alcoholic.
Yeah. I mean that black lung is really going to come back to haunt you someday.
I tell you what.
If you had it. From having actually done work.
When did you work in a fucking factory?
When I was a teenager, I worked in a factory.
Yeah, so did I. I pulled out the heating ducts from the fucking Hilton Hotel in Vienna.
So you're not only proficient in diction, but also duction.
There we go.
Not seduction.
No, absolutely.
Just duction.
Absolutely
just duction.
I think that incels should become a protective class. I think I should get a grant from the government for being an incel.
I think we should write the letter together today. Yeah. So I was about to say, we often talk about soft skills in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I think we could say that you have a lot of...
It's like your bed skills, isn't it?
This is a serious note.
Right.
That's not funny.
Well, you can't get an erection. I think it's hilarious.
Listen, I can, okay? Whoever's listening to this, I can. And is this going out in the main feed?
Main feed, yeah.
Jesus Christ. Anyway... I think you have a lot of soft skills that are pertinent to the group of people in the gaming world that you choose to associate with, right? Because how do you take this sort of class of individuals and manage to organize them into groups where people actually can sit down and have a good time?
Right.
It's not the easiest thing to do, and I think you're actually very good at that. I've always felt that you're like the life of the game, because you always say that you're not good at games. And I always say, you are good at games, you just play them differently. Like, you're not good in the sense that you often...
That might be the most patronising statements I've ever heard in my life. No, carry on, finish.
It's not that you're good in the sense that you frequently win them, but I think you have more fun with them, and you appreciate them, and you get something out of them more than people who simply sit there and like robotically move their pieces around until they make everybody else feel like they shouldn't even woke up that morning.
So what are you trying to say? I'm the greatest?
In this context...
Right.
Not many other contexts, but definitely this one.
So not many other contexts implies other contexts. What other contexts?
I wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for you having these characteristics.
That's because you fancy me, though, isn't it?
I mean, who doesn't?
Anyway, so we're going to get on to the new patrons.
How many?
One.
Why'd you say patrons?
Because I've decided.
Should I cancel my patronship and then rejoin?
No.
Just so you have...
Oh, yeah. If you did that, it would charge you today and then at the beginning of the next month as well.
I think you can go into the settings and you can change it so that you only get charged on the day that you join.
Can you?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
I'm going to do that then.
And then every month recurring.
Right. I mean, that's important, isn't it?
I think so.
All right, so I'm going to give you the name. You're gonna...
It's my turn?
Yeah, it is.
Are you sure I didn't do this last time?
I can't remember. Who remembers? A long time ago. We were at the bloody marathon then.
Okay. What's the name?
Marcus Shepherd.
Marcus Shepherd. I'm going to go with Marcus the Dog Shepherd.
Very good. One man and his dog.
D-A-W-G.
Do you remember One Man and His Dog?
I think so. Why is that familiar?
It was televised, like BBC One, on a Sunday evening, like prime time.
BBC, is that how you say it?
Yeah, BBC, yeah. BBC One, yeah.
You said BBC.
We miss things out in English because we're so familiar with the language because it's our language.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It belongs to you.
Yeah, exactly. BBC One, Sunday night, prime time, televised sheepdog trials.
Trial? What is the trial? You mean?
So
they're put on trial, like in the dock.
You know that joke has been made a lot in sort of children's comics. No, sheepdog trials is where the bloke stands there with the dog and he goes, come by, and they've got to get the sheep into a pen. The dog's like got to herd the sheep into a pen,
like competitively.
Yeah, it's like who can get the sheep in the pen quickest.
Your island is so strange. I mean, you also have
Sunday night prime time. One man and his dog.
This is like the Scottish Highland games where they're like pitching logs around and throwing rocks at each other.
Wouldn't you want to sit down and watch one man and his dog, though?
I mean, at my age, probably.
I mean, at any age. I used to love it as a kid. Come by.
Yeah, I mean...
That's what they do.
I did sit down in the University College London lounge for like...
Why do you... So, I've got a question for you. You can finish the anecdote in a second. But why every news episode do you just subtly drop that you went to UCL?
Every single one?
Every one you mentioned UCL.
I think it was the first time.
Absolutely not. Listeners, at 5 Games for Doomsday, hashtag first time, hashtag aldi time.
Yeah, like anyone's going to go back and verify it anyway.
There's got to be a Steve Wiki at this point,
if it winds you up, I'm going to do it every time. I sat in that lounge and I wondered
which
why...
lounge?
The University College London.
Oh, yeah.
It was the lounge of...
Because wasn't it the last episode you mentioned about
Campbell Hall.
The dead lad being on the board?
I don't remember. Who can remember that? Like you just said. I sat in that lounge wondering, why are all these people watching a snooker tournament? But I was transfixed.
Snooker. Why do you say snooker?
Snooker?
There's 2 O's in it. Snooker.
I don't know. Whatever.
Snooker.
Probably because of Snooky, right? So anyway... I remember there was this snooker celebrity at the time.
Yeah.
He was like the young hotshot of the snooker world.
Was it Ronnie O'Sullivan?
It would have been in 1999.
So it probably would have been Ronnie O'Sullivan.
I think he had long hair, maybe?
Oh, might have been Peter Ebdon then.
I don't remember the name. But it was very exciting for the students, and I didn't get it. And
snooker's amazing.
Then I got it.
Yeah, you should get into cricket.
It doesn't seem like the most obvious thing that you would want to sit and watch. And then, I would probably watch people like competitively mowing their lawns at this point.
And so this is a news show, right?
Yeah,
this is the news show.
It is. I don't really distinguish between the various shows, to be honest.
So that's my job. I'm the editor.
Yeah.
So how, as a news show, how well do you think we fulfilled our brief thus far as a hot, finger on the button news show?
So. What kind of news are we supposed to be reporting on?
Well, hot current news.
So how many British prime ministers have there been since the inauguration of this particular show?
Like 9 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And they're all from the ERG.
Yeah. Should we talk about that?
It may be. Well, I've seen The Rest is Politics, and they must be making real bucks off their show. Maybe if we start talking politics.
The thing is, every episode is an emergency episode when it's about your country.
Exactly. Anyway,
and to be fair, also mine.
Yeah, your country's crap. We're going to the random number generator for the questions. What number are you looking for?
17.
Actually, randomly, the best number has come up.
What's that? 23?
Not 23.
5.
No.
Is it going to be like a number associated with your birthday?
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Actually, you did it better than me.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
All right, it's from Chris Yee. Famous Chris Yee from the Dice Tower.
Have I met him?
He was at Essen. I don't know whether you met him, though.
Okay, but he listens.
Well, he asked a question.
Is he a patron?
Oh, this is a good question,
do you allow non-patrons to ask questions?
Yeah, well, I'm just starving for attention.
Do you think patrons should, like, their questions should bubble to the top of the queue?
I mean, if I could work out some sort of, what's it called? That string.
Anything whatsoever?
A macro, if I could work out a macro for that.
A macro.
Yeah, that's what they're called.
I mean, so the people post the questions to the Board Game Geek forum?
And the Facebook page and Twitter.
I mean, why don't you just like cross-reference who's posting questions with your list of patrons?
If there was a macro, Steve, I'd do it.
How about like a piece of paper and
What?
a pen?
What are you saying?
All right, what's Chris's question?
So, what is something you failed at, you're glad you failed at in retrospect? I know this is hard for you. You've had a life of unparalleled constant success.
I think that for me, the answer is obvious.
What's that?
You should be able to answer this question.
Getting an erection.
No. You should be able to answer this question for me.
Yeah, I know. I think I know the answer, but I don't want to say it for fear of offence.
I will choose not to be offended in this particular moment for this purpose.
I think you think that the situation, the comfortable life you're currently leading, unalloyed success within the tech industry is down to the fact you didn't finish your PhD thesis.
Yes.
Will you finish your PhD thesis, or do you think that's dead in the water?
I continue to think that I will, but I don't see myself working on it. I mean, I actually have to this would have to be like a very decisive thing for me. I'd have to like wake up in the morning at like 6 and spend an hour or two a day doing it, or find time on the weekends, or somehow fit it in. And like I would have to really want to do it and really like plug away at it to do that for like weeks, maybe a few months. I haven't done it yet.
That'd be exciting though. You could be Dr. Steve, couldn't you?
What was the follow-up question?
That was it. That was the question.
Which is something I failed at that what?
That you're glad you failed at in retrospect.
The thing is being glad that I failed at it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm technically glad that I failed at it, except...
Well, if you can stretch the definition, you can stretch the definition of the question to what...
I mean, I don't regret... Maybe I don't regret failing at it, or... I don't regret not going into academia, I don't think. Especially after the pandemic. It must have been horrible to be a professor or any kind of teacher during the pandemic. And my discipline, English literature, was already kind of a dying field in a lot of ways. Had I gotten a job, like a very good job... Like I went to a very good university with a very highly regarded program. Had I gotten a very good job...
You did try to claim it was Ivy League the other day. Dane Ivy League.
It's in the milieu of the Ivy Leagues, like the department. Not
the finest bass singer of the 20th century did attend the university, though.
Can't say it's a colonial school, though. Anyway, it has Ivy on it.
Right.
You know that the origin...
Rutgers, by the way, for all the American listeners.
Do you know the origin of the term Ivy League? It was originally...
I love these. Carry on.
Yeah, it was originally...
Interesting.
It was originally a term of derision.
Yeah.
From sports, because all of the schools, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, Cornell, Columbia, whatever, Dartmouth, they all played against each other in athletic competitions.
Yeah. Like football.
And I think in the 1920s,
football, baseball.
And they weren't taken seriously by like other schools. They were terrible at it. Like, they were like, intellectuals. They weren't very good at sports. And there was some sports commentator in the 1920s who referred to them as these so-called Ivy Leagues because, they're all East Coast and they have ivy, picturesquely climbing among the colonial buildings.
So they're not concentrating on the sport. They're concentrating on the thinking.
Yeah, so I guess it's one of these like reclaimed
is college baseball
terms.
A thing? It's not as big a thing, is it?
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah.
It's not as big a thing, though, is it? It's college football. Or college basketball.
Yeah, I guess not.
But
I was going somewhere with that.
Yeah.
So a good job would be like a professor of English in, the University of Western Nebraska.
Right. That would be all right, wouldn't it?
I don't even know if that's a real university.
Western Nebraska would be lols, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure that's a real place.
You go down to the bar where they play country and that.
Yeah, sure. But like you can't really decide where you're going to live, where you're going to work. You go to where the jobs are, and every year there are like a few hundred jobs for several thousand applicants. There might be like 3 or 4 in your area of expertise. You're lucky to get one.
I'm just playing a violin for all the poor academics out there.
Yeah, please.
Let's not think about the Amazon warehouse people. Let's think of the poor academics.
I'm trying to answer Chris's question.
And I'm helping you.
Now, I'm starting to regret in this conversation not moving to Western Nebraska for that plum professorship because the alternative was like...
This right now?
Yep.
What are you hoping for now? What number? We've had number 9. Number 9.
What's another like musical number?
3.
I think
4.
17. Frank Sinatra, When I Was 17. I'm going to stick with 17.
17. Oh,
yeah. When 17. I was 17, it was a very good year.
17, what's the 17th letter of the alphabet?
Off the top of my head?
Yeah.
I don't know. L?
No.
What is it?
It's what you believe in.
Huh?
Q. Yeah. 27, Stevie. 27.
Why did I think it was L?
It's close. L's close to Q, isn't it?
A little bit, kind of.
Yeah, it's sort of middle of the alphabet, isn't it? Richard Trout.
Haven't we heard from him before?
Yeah, sure. He's probably asked multiple questions. All right, so you're going to have to think back to episodes of my podcast.
Oh, God.
And so I'll go first.
Can I quickly go listen to all of them at 8x?
Yes, I mean, that's what you do anyway. So what are the 3 best games that were introduced to you from your visitors to the cabin? What a hard question. I'm gonna answer this first so as to give you the opportunity to not listen to me and come up with your answer. Oh, that's really hard, isn't it? That's really hard. I can't think of any because I edit it and then it goes out of my mind.
Why don't we stand up and take a quick saunter over to my games cabinet?
Okay.
Because I think if I'm looking at them...
Walk and talk. But introduced by guests from the cabin.
Yes, but I'm sure that...
Did you buy any games based on my podcast?
Yeah, definitely. Either recommended by you or...
So we're walking through the kitchen now?
Yeah,
going
definitely.
Into Steve's games room.
I've definitely purchased games based on people's recommendations from the show.
So I can't remember, but Steve's going to answer. If you hear a sound difference, it's because we're in Steve's game room now.
Yeah, so let's have a look around and think... What have people recommended to us?
Looking at his games, he's recently acquired Amsterdam and Hamburg.
Yeah.
The underrated classic Trade on the Tigris is next to them. Woodcraft, which we played the other day, it's wonderful. I very much enjoyed it. Steve said he thought it was the best sushi game.
Really good. We need to play it again. Absolutely.
Blood on the Clock Tower, that's enjoyable. Bit fiddly. That's a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm looking.
So Matt Kint suggested a game the other day, and I can't remember what it's called. Oh, Tinner's Trail there, Steve, by Martin Wallace. It's a classic.
I don't think anyone recommended it in the cabinet.
No.
Right? So if you go to the podcast in your podcast app, you can probably scroll through and see.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to answer this.
So I can think of one game. And Matt Kint...
How many did he want? 5?
3.
3 is still pretty tough.
Let's have a look.
Did anyone ever recommend Pipeline?
So Matt Kint suggested a game, Ortus Regni, which is a card game that just has...
I remember that recommendation.
Just has pictures on the card and doesn't have any numbers or suit symbols. And I looked it up and it sounds absolutely fascinating. That's one I'd like to try, although I have yet to try it.
Can you buy it in the geek market?
Sure, I'm sure you can. I think you can buy it from the bloke's website.
Okay, I'm going to take a look at... We're really attempting to answer this question. You know, we take these questions very seriously.
Mr. Trout, we're here for you.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a look at some recent episodes, what people have recommended. Can't do this all day. Let's see. See, you didn't put the recommendations in the interview descriptions going all the way back.
New host. I'm getting used to the new stuff, so you know.
Okay, so Ryan Courtney has picked Madeira, which I did back, but not on his recommendation. Let's see, Mark Herman, not in here. Okay, don't have them in there. What else we got? Jerry Hawthorne, no notes. Very good.
Hi.
CT Wen, no notes. I feel like he recommended something that I got. I don't know why. Brett Gilbert. Just One, Carcassonne. Nope, none of these. I feel like you've definitely had guests that have definitely picked games.
Well, I tell you what, Steve, as you looking through your phone,
maybe it's just games. Maybe it's just games people have talked about with you, and I found out about them that way.
So let's just say, anyone who's listening to this, why don't you do some bloody work for a change? Get on the Twitter at 5games for Doomsday. Tell us your 3 favourite games that have been recommended to you by guests on the show. Also, Steve?
Yeah, Richard Trout. What 3 games have you ever purchased?
Yeah, exactly.
Based on this? Why are you putting this on us?
Yeah, why are you making us do the work? Do you know how hard we bloody work all the time?
Yeah, I mean, about this hard.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, at 5games for Doomsday. Also, Steve LSU, LSC, what is it?
UCL.
UCL?
Yeah.
UCL, no. UCL all the bloody time.
News. So I'm honoured to have the most reluctant yet seemingly productive game designer in the game industry, Dan Hughes, famous award-winning designer of CoraQuest. Welcome to the news.
Thank you. I feel honoured to be here, and I feel like legitimised. I feel legitimised, Ben, to
if
be
you
on
get
the
on news show. I mean, this is, you got the rest is politics with Alistair Campbell and that, but this is where the rubber really meets the road. Do you know what I mean?
You forget I'm used to being on the news. I was on the BBC News with the first Kickstarter for CoraQuest.
Oh, that Mickey Mouse
I'm used to it. And
Come on now.
And I must say this is a step up. This really is.
I mean, the green room's amazing.
Absolutely stunning. I love the fact you've got chocolate oranges just lining the walls. You can eat as many chocolate oranges as you want.
They're not Terry's, Dan. They're mine.
No. Well, they're Morrison's own brand, but still, it's all that counts.
Anyway, so the reason I'm here, so I've mentioned this on other podcasts, and I seem to mention this whenever I get you on a microphone, but you have stated once before, I'm never going to design a game. Then you designed a game. And then you've definitively stated, that's it, I'm done, no expansions, I've had a nice experiment, and I'm going no further with it. And now you've designed an expansion. So firstly, why?
I think mainly because it was so enjoyable to do the base game. I don't think I ever said I would never design an expansion. In fact, I was designing an expansion as the last CoraQuest Kickstarter went on. It's just an enjoyable experience to work with my daughter and design stuff and the joy of creation, as it were. So it was just wanting to explore the world of CoraQuest a bit more, to be honest. I was never sure if it was going to come out as do a Kickstarter again. That's the bit that was a bit more dodgy. But I would have possibly just released stuff for free. In fact, I did release quite a few adventures and stuff for free. But I've eventually amassed enough stuff, enough new stuff and new rules and things like that. Where I thought, well, this is a new box in itself. So let's do it again.
And so how was the design process different this time? Because, the original CoraQuest just came out of a project you were doing with Cora for school. And there was never sort of an intention of it being a game that other people would play. I guess that's different with this expansion, right? So how was your approach different and how was Cora's input different?
It was quite different, actually, because, as you say, before it was just creating something for us, and we only had to meet the expectations of ourselves, really. Certainly when we were designing it, and later on, with playtesting and stuff like that, there was more designing for an audience with this one. It was more kind of looking at what people were saying about the game, which is generally very positive, but also people saying, well, I really wish there was a kind of campaign element to this. I really wish that we could, my son or my daughter wants to keep their weapons from one adventure to another and things like that. So I sat down with Cora basically, and we looked at those as a kind of a problem to be solved rather than something just to be created out of nothing. I mean, design wise, an expansion, because this is very much a more of the same type expansion. There's not as much new rules and things like that to come up with. We weren't starting from scratch, so we were building on something. So it was about problem solving really, and brainstorming and working out how we wanted to do it. So Cora's input was lesser because she's the person who came up with all the core mechanics and things like that. So, but it was still equal to mine because there's just less designing to do in an expansion. It's more, to be honest, it's a lot of storytelling because it's creating new stories and things like that. So much less mechanical stuff and much more storytelling and building on what we've got. I mean, there still was some mechanical stuff. We had to think about how we wanted to handle a campaign, and one of the things that we've always done with CoraQuest is been quite modular, and we both wanted to keep that kind of modular thing going through the thing. So you can play these adventures in any order, and you can play them as a solo aside from a campaign. Because one of the things that I don't like about campaigns, I don't know how you, Ben, I don't know how many campaign games you've played, you tend to play the first game and then you don't play the game again for a couple of months. So you think, let's just start again at the first game again, and then you go away. Then someone else joins your game groups and they don't know the rules properly. So we'll just start the first game again, and so you end up with a massive campaign book that you've only ever played the first one adventure in, because you're constantly having to restart for various reasons, and so that's what I wanted to bring to it, that kind of modularity, in that you don't have to do that. You can start at any point within this campaign, and the difficulty scales as you improve, but there's a way of plugging that in rather than the difficulty being absolutely hardwired into each adventure. So, yeah.
You were quite sort of adamant in the first game that you didn't want a campaign for those reasons that you've said.
Yeah.
But do you think that the expansion is the kind of perfect place to introduce the campaign, because people now know that they want more of it, and also the kids who are playing are familiar with the rules enough so you can leap in and, enjoy telling a story with something in a world that they're familiar with?
Yeah, basically, I think, and it's an optional thing rather than a I can't think of the word. What's the opposite of optional?
Mandatory.
Mandatory. Thank you very much. It's an optional thing rather than a mandatory thing, and the campaign rules are still optional even with all these adventures in here. So it's a mandatory nature of campaign games that I find quite irritating at times. But yeah, I think it's come from the feedback we've got. It's come from people saying, I want to carry my weapons from one adventure to another, and kids saying, I want to get better, and the realization that I mean it's such a wonderful thing that this is some family's favorite game. This is some of the kids out there. This is their obsession. They're making new characters, and they're making new adventurers for it, and they're making their own stories, and we get sent pictures they've drawn, and we get sent people are sending me quests they've written for the game. It's absolutely fantastic, and while this expansion's very, very usable for the casual game as well, I also wanted to add to that those kids' obsession, give them more stuff to play with, really.
And so, I mean, the obvious question to ask is that gratifying? But I mean, it's an obvious answer too, that it's clearly gratifying when people say it's my favourite game and you see people out in the wild really enjoying what you've done. So I'd rather know, how weird is it that something that you've created has become the kind of, is going to, I guess, when these kids are sort of gnarly old 45-year-olds, they'll look back to those happy days in the living room playing something that you've created?
It is very weird, but it's also still quite abstract. A lot of these people exist through, number one, they exist through communications from their parents who tell me about things, but also exist through the emails and the quests they write and stuff like that. So it's especially weird when, like, we've been at AirCon, for example, and someone came up to us and with their kid and said how much they loved the game and told us all about how they'd made their own characters and they were the hero, and then their three dogs were their kind of sidekicks and all this kind of stuff. And that was amazing. It almost brought tears to your eyes. It's just wonderful to be part of a childhood. I mean, it's one thing to make something for an adult that an adult really enjoys, but to be part of a childhood is such a privilege, isn't it?
I mean, it's going to survive throughout their lives, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be bigger than Monopoly or anything, but to a portion of children who've played it and enjoyed it and loved it, then yeah, this is going to be a fun memory they're going to take, for 80 years, or 80, 100, who knows with the life expectancies, and will always be something to look back on fondly. And that's, as I say, it's a massive privilege to that something on your kitchen table can turn into that.
All right, then. So we've discussed how wonderful you are and what a humanitarian.
Yeah, I'm pretty wonderful.
Well,
yeah.
Sure. What's in the expansion then? So people who are backing the expansion, what can they expect?
Well, it's a more of the same expansion, basically. So there's more heroes, there's more treasure, there's 10 more adventures, there's 10 adventures split up into 2 different campaigns. So there's a campaign of 5 adventures and another campaign of 5 adventures. And as I say, you can play them individually on their own, or you can use them as a campaign. And there's a way of both leveling up the characters and leveling up the difficulty of the game in order that it remains balanced. We've got new environments going on, so there's slime environments and cold environments, and just like last time, and again, this is where the privilege comes in, where all the art in the game is coming from kids in the community. So we've already been asking for art from the community, but there's even in the Kickstarter we'll be asking for more heroes coming in and some pictures of some villains and some some of the really kind of big bits. There's also a Kickstarter exclusive. Well, not exclusive. Ooh. A Kickstarter thank you, which is some special black dice, which is kind of super black dice, which are much more stronger than the dice in the game. So just loads of stuff. I'm not a very good salesman, Ben, but there's just lots of more of the same, basically. New enemies, new heroes, new treasure, new adventures, new everything, and a campaign rule.
So I recently got a message from a friend of mine. I'd interviewed a very well-known designer about a project that they had coming up, and he said, the more I listen to them talk, the less I want to back their project. So let's hope that you don't have the same effect.
I know.
But I've noticed on your Facebook profile where you go to Moan, you've been talking a lot about a choose your own adventure style module. Is that
that's true.
Expansion?
Well, no, it's not an expansion. No, it's what it is. It's I've never really been comfortable with some parts of Kickstarter. Some parts of Kickstarter feel very salesy, very marketingy. And that is what Kickstarter is. I appreciate that. And this is what I'm doing. I'm putting a product out and I'm asking people to buy it. So I understand my hypocrisy in this. But I don't like the financial stretch goals because we all know they're a lie, Ben. We all know they're a lie. That they've worked all these out prior and they're using it to manipulate people to come back to the page, to get the algorithms up and stuff like that. So I thought, I wanted to find a different way to manipulate people to come back to the page and get the algorithms up. So what we've done is instead of financially linked stretch goals, we've been honest with it and just saying, look, there's more in this box than we're telling you when you first come to the Kickstarter. We're going to, every couple of days, we're going to be releasing, telling you basically something else that's going to be in there. So these are all costed, these are all planned, but just kind of revealing new bits just to try and get some interest going. And then alongside that, I've spent, I'd say, roughly 6 months of my life tearing my hair out writing a choose your own adventure story, which we're giving away free. And there's going to be, and each one of those choose your own adventure chapters is kind of linked to the next reveal and things like that. So kind of a story that goes over the course of the Kickstarter, and every couple of days there'll be a new chapter you can look at, and then you can do that choose your own adventure story with just on your own or with your children or whatever, and that will link into the next reveal type thing. So it's a bit of fun just to keep people engaged through the campaign. But I tell you what, Ben, writing a choose your own adventure story is a lot harder than you first think.
It sounds like a bloody nightmare, to be honest.
Oh, it is, because it's like, yeah, it's fair enough. There's 11 different chapters, but each of those chapters have got to have at least 4 different stories within it, branching stories and ends and stuff like that. So it's just like this Medusa that you think, oh, I finished that bit, and then there's 10 more things pop up that you've got to do, and it's a bit of a nightmare, really. But it's done. It's finished. I've written it.
Is it any good, though?
I like it. I like it. It's set in the world of CoraQuest. It's the world that I created when I was telling my kids stories. The world of CoraQuest is the world of my family. That wizard Pebble Dash is the main protagonist often. And yeah, I like it. I'll say yes, it is good. There you go.
And so, I mean, this might not be the time to ask you at the dawning of the Kickstarter campaign for the expansion, but what do you see as the future for CoraQuest? Do you see this as it, or do you see, it having a life beyond, and maybe even kind of like in the way Frank West has taken his world and designed different games within it? Do you see there being sort of standalone games within the CoraQuest world and all of that sort of stuff?
It's possible. I mean, Yeah, I think it's possible. I don't know how. I think Cora's been absolutely loving the design process and the playtesting process. Although I do protect her from some of the playtesting because I tell you what, I don't want her to have to do hundreds and hundreds of playtests. But she does playtest with me and all that kind of stuff. And the moment that stops, I'm not going to force her to participate further. But I mean, I can take the thing. I mean, I've already got ideas of writing a book, Ben. I'll be honest with you. I'd love to write a kids' book set in that world. And as for games, who knows? As you know, there's no point in me making a definitive statement anyway, because I'll just go back on it. So I could say, yes, there definitely will be. There definitely will be.
You make it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's whatever creative urge blows the sails of my the ship of my life, basically. Whichever way the wind blows, I'll follow it. So yeah. I don't know whether the choose your own adventure thing is kind of cured me of the desire to write a kid's book or not, but that's the thing that's currently rattling around my brain. But who knows? So
then let's get to the vital statistics. When is it coming out? I think this will go out after the campaign has started, but what is the price? Where can people go? And all of that sort of great stuff.
Well, the price is £27, which is cheap, in my opinion, for a game. 27 quid, which is probably about $4, depending on how the UK economy is doing at that particular point in time. And the place to go would be, well, Kickstarter and search for CoraQuest. You'll find it there. Or you can go to CoraQuest.com and there'll be a link propelling you in that direction, no doubt, at that time. And it goes live on the 24th. So if it's past the 24th, and it's going for 18 days, a nice short campaign.
So just to wrap up then, why should people back CoraQuest Keep On Questing? And did you notice that's the first time we've actually said the title of the thing?
Yeah.
16 minutes into the interview.
CoraQuest Keep On Questing. Well, you should back it if you enjoy CoraQuest and you want more of the same. You'll also obviously be able to buy the base game there as well. It's a genuine, heartfelt project that's lovely. I think it's a lovely game to play. I think it's a game that parents and kids can play together, or adults and children can play together, and both gain equal amounts of enjoyment from it. I think it encourages creativity in children. I think it encourages creativity in adults. I think it's enjoyment in a box is what it is. It's enjoyment in the box, and I've rarely had a game where we've not all been kind of standing up and cheering when we win at the end, and that's what you want in a adventure game. So yeah, buy it because of that, and to help put Cora through university as well. Do that as well.
Brilliant. Well, Dan Hughes, future winner of the Spiel des Jahres. Thank you very much.
You keep saying that. You keep saying that. There's no golden raspberry award for board gaming, is there? Maybe I shouldn't say that when I'm trying to promote a Kickstarter. You see, this is why I'm no good at this stuff.
News.
So I'm very excited to have on the show someone who's doing all the great works for charity, and this is George Jaros. George, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So the reason we're talking is that you posted on the creators group on Facebook about the Extra Life auction that you're holding in a couple of weeks or so. And so first, for those who might not know what Extra Life is, can you give us an overview of the organisation, what they do, who they do it for, and all of that good stuff?
Sure. Extra Life is an organization that started in 2005. It was started after a young girl named Victoria Enman. She went by Tori. She was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And then over the course of 4 years, she fought the cancer multiple times. And during her hospital stay, she visited with other sick children. She was just a very happy, excited person, despite the battles that she was fighting. And then she partnered with a few people called the Sarcastic Gamer video game community. Somebody named Doc Adams, Jeremy Doc Adams. They worked together at a fundraiser that was in 2005 at the Texas Children's Hospital. It was their radiothon that they did to raise funds for treating childhood cancer. And then in 2008, when Tori passed away, this Doc Adams and other people that she had met through that fundraiser and other events that she was doing with this Sarcastic Gamer video game community, they decided to run a fundraiser in her name, and they called it Extra Life because it was video gamers that were involved in this. And the first official Extra Life fundraiser was in 2008, and 1,200 video gamers came together and raised over $110,000 for the Texas Children's Cancer Center. Over the years, that event grew, and it became part of the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. It became one of their fundraising branches that focused specifically on gamers, and they expanded to tabletop gamers and video gamers and people that play sports and outdoor games and just anybody that wants to play games and have fun to raise money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So not just the Texas Children's Cancer Center anymore, but all Children's Miracle Network hospitals.
And so we hear stories over here in Europe about the sort of, and what's a good word to describe it? The aberrant nature of the American health system. You know, people having to do GoFundMes for monthly insulin prescriptions and things like that. I mean, so how important is something like Extra Life for helping people, you know, kids getting treatment in a country in which the health service is, if you want to speak charitably, inconsistent?
Yeah. The health services here in the U.S. definitely are inconsistent. We have health insurance, but you have to pay for it, and often it's very expensive. I went through a period about 3 years ago where we didn't have health insurance, but I had to be in the hospital, and we weren't sure how we were going to get the funds covered and stuff. And fortunately for me, everything worked out okay. But it really, got me to thinking, how do other families handle these situations? And I started looking into, I was already doing the Extra Life stuff, but I started looking into maybe supporting other charities. And so I looked into what Extra Life and Children's Miracle Network hospitals really do in a lot more detail. And it's a wonderful organization. They treat every child that goes through their doors, regardless of the family's ability to pay. So even if they don't have health insurance or their health insurance isn't going to cover all the services that they need, whatever the situation is, if a child goes through their doors, they're going to treat the child. And that's part of what the Extra Life funds go towards, is those treatments for kids that whose families can't afford it. And the other thing that's great about the organization is they don't just say, okay, we're going to bring the kid in and we're going to treat the kid, and family, you have to do, deal with whatever. They help support the entire family as well. They provide services for the family because, if you have one kid in the hospital, you've got other kids at home that you have mouths to feed and stuff. So they support the entire family. And it's through fundraising efforts like Extra Life that they are able to do that. And so, once I learned a little bit more about exactly where the money goes and how it's spent and what it's for, I said, you know what, this is the charity that I want to continue working with, continue supporting, and so the events that I've run, they've just continued to grow over the years, and I feel. Personally, that the money is going to a great cause, and the money that I'm raising, it's being used and spent in a very worthwhile manner.
And so it started off with video games, but I've noticed over the past decade, you know, the Extra Life thing coming into the board game arena. So what kind of events have board gamers arranged over the time since it's sort of become more than just people playing video games?
Yeah, a lot of it kind of came about with the invention of the technology and stuff that can really support this. Video gaming is still the biggest part of the Extra Life community. You'll get Extra Life fundraisers that will stream on Twitch to raise funds and stuff like that. And in the last few years, especially since the pandemic, the board game community has really started to embrace those live streaming platforms. And, you'll see other board gamers that will stream on Twitch or on YouTube or whatever to bring in funds. The first Saturday of November is always considered the game day for Extra Life, and that's when gamers of all sorts are encouraged to have a 24-hour board game marathon to raise funds. And a lot of those, you'll see them on Twitch and YouTube and other streaming platforms and stuff. But in the more recent years, Extra Life has had tabletop appreciation days and stuff like that focus more on the tabletop community than just the video game community. And those events have been growing and growing and growing over the last few years. I still participate in the main game day because that's what I started out doing, and that's kind of what I work my schedule around. But the tabletop community, as far as Extra Life goes, has definitely been growing and becoming a more significant part of it and a more visible part of it over the last few years. You'll go to conventions now and you'll see different Extra Life organizations at the conventions. Like I was at Origins in Ohio this year, and Extra Life Ohio had a big booth set up there where they were raising funds. So it's becoming much more visible in the gaming community, and I'm excited to have been kind of a part of that.
And so, before we get on to the reason you're here, how do you cope with playing games for 24 hours?
A lot of caffeine. I started doing the 24-hour marathon in 2016. At that point, I thought it was just going to be some fun. It was a way for me to raise a few $100s for charity. It was a way for me to tell my wife, hey, I'm going to go out and board game for 24 hours and it's for sick kids. So you can't tell me no, right? So she was very supportive of it. And as I learned more about it, I started not just going and playing games for 24 hours. I started organizing the events and stuff around it that I do locally here. And, it's a lot of caffeine. It helps to have other people that are there with you, because you kind of feed off of each other. The last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, were very difficult because I usually do an in-person 24-hour game marathon at a local store. And, we have a number of people that come in and out throughout the day, and have 15, 20 people that stay the full 24 hours. But in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I couldn't do it in person. So I decided I was going to try my hand at live streaming for 24 hours. So I did that for my front room, live streamed for 24 hours, which was very difficult because for 24 hours, it was me talking to myself and hoping that people were occasionally dropping in to watch and support. So whereas the in-person events, I'm talking with other people that are there, we're interacting, we're doing stuff. This was, a spotlight on me the whole time. Even when there was nobody watching, I felt like, well, if somebody drops in and they just see me sitting in front of a table playing a game with nothing, they're going to drop right back out. So I had to keep talking, even though, there was nobody to talk to. So that was very difficult. And then last year I did the same thing. but I was able to go to one of my local game stores and play there occasionally. So I did have some people in and out a little bit. So it was a little bit easier. And this year we're back to doing the 24-hour marathon completely in person. So I'm looking forward to that.
And so the reason we're talking is that you're also having an auction in connection with Extra Life. So can you give us the details on what that is and what people can bid on and so on and so forth?
Sure. So in 2015, before I started with Extra Life, the year before I found out about it, a Magic the Gathering player at my local game store approached the game store owner and said, "Hey, I want to do this 24-hour marathon." And they said, okay. And they decided to set up a board game auction where local gamers could donate some of their games, get some store credit that they could use in the store, and then some of the funds that were raised would go to Extra Life as well. And it between that and the person's 24-hour event, they raised a couple $100, and it was fun. And then the next year I learned about that and put some games in the auction and sold them and attended a 24-hour event. And then just kind of saw how wonderful that was. And then in 2017, I took over planning the auction. I started to reach out to some industry companies and get some sponsorships, to have them donate some games for the auction. One of my hobbies is tabletop game design. So I knew a few publishers, and I reached out to them, like Thunderworks Games and the Game Crafter, and they donated some stuff. And we raised more in 2017 than we had in the 2 previous years combined, which was great. And since then, I've continued to just grow the event. And in 2018, the amount that we raised from the auction eclipsed the amount that we raised just through the other fundraising efforts. In 2019, it grew significantly. We were up to, I believe, 20-some sponsors. Plus, I started reaching out to the local businesses in the area, and we got a number of sponsors that way. And then in 2020, almost everything was through the auction because we couldn't do any of the in-person events or anything. And so in 2020, I really focused on growing this auction, this board game auction. We had 40 some industry sponsors. We raised $1,800 through the auction about, and we moved from having the auction just as pictures in a Facebook group that people could comment their bids on to an actual auction platform called Auctria that let us do a whole lot more in 2020 as far as having maximum bids, so that you could bid a certain amount and your bid would automatically rise as other people bid. It had all kinds of organization and you could favorite and wish list items and all sorts of stuff. So in 2020, it went from just kind of being a small Facebook auction thing to being something big, able to reach out to the main community. And then in 2021, I continued to grow it. We had 75 sponsors in 2021 and raised over $5,000 in the auction and over $6,300 total throughout the fundraising events. And this year, it's continuing to grow even more. We're up to 76 sponsors. We have hundreds of items loaded into the auction website. And I'm really excited for what it's going to turn into this year. Because
so what kind of cool things can we bid on? If you had your druthers, what would you be looking at?
There are some really cool items available for auction this year. Bezier Games donated the collector's edition of Suburbia, Kickstarter edition of that. So that is available. There's a copy of Gloomhaven available from Cephalofair Games. Thunderworks Games has donated a few of their popular titles like Cape May and Lockup and Role Player. there's hundreds of games available. We also have partnered with the Game Crafter and have a number of games from designers from the Game Crafters design community. So they're less well-known designers, but some really incredible games. I have a few of my own designs in there, and then I think we've got about 20 other games from designers from the Game Crafter, including the anthology that was part of a Game Crafter contest last year, where a number of different designers designed one-page games that got put into a spiral-bound book. So that book itself has, I want to say 62 games or something like that in it, in just the one book. So, and then there's everything in between. We've got games from Gamelin Games, from Brotherwise Games, from indie boards and cards, Stronghold Games, tons and tons of very well-known publishers. Like I said, we're up to 76, and I am still getting people responding saying that they would like to help out and send stuff in, and I'm getting deliveries. My basement is just filled with shelves and shelves of games that are all numbered and cataloged and ready to get shipped out to people when the auction ends.
So when is the auction, and how can we be involved and bid on stuff?
The auction starts on Friday, November 4th at 7 p.m. U.S. Central Time, and it runs through Friday, November 11th at 10 p.m. U.S. Central Time. And you can just go to the website, which is charityauction.bid/2022 extra life -GJJ games. And you can go to that website, and you'll be able to create an account and look at all the games and bid on them. You can go to the auction site at any time. You don't have to wait for the auction to open, and you'll be able to look at the items, and there's a little star on every item page, so you can favorite the ones that you really want to keep tabs on, and then when the auction opens, you'll be able to start placing bids. And the night when the auction closes on November 11th, there is a bid extension feature. So if a bid comes in within the last 5 minutes of the auction, the time on that item will be extended for 5 minutes. So you don't have to worry about, that item that you really were excited about getting snagged by somebody at the last second. There will be a little bit of time there for you to come back and bid. So the last few hours of the auction get pretty exciting with people going back and forth trying to get the items that they are excited about.
And is it just open to the States, or can anyone around the world be involved?
Anyone around the world can be involved. I have a number of publishers from Europe and overseas that have donated games. Shipping is calculated on the site if you're shipping to the U.S. If you are shipping internationally, we can do that, but obviously the shipping charges are going to be higher. But we can ship. Last year I shipped to Canada. I shipped to Australia. I think I shipped a game to the UK. So we don't get many international bidders because of the shipping charges. But I'm happy to work with anybody to get them games if they want to support. If you still want to support but don't want to purchase games, don't want to worry about the shipping charges, you can always donate directly. And the auction site has links to my Extra Life fundraising page where you can just donate funds directly.
Excellent. Well, George Jaros, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm very excited on the news show to have Christian Kudahl all the way from Denmark. So first of all, Christian, I better tell the audience who you are and what you do first. Professional, you see. So Christian is one of the co-designers with Richard Garfield and others of Mindbug, the new player-on-player attacky card game. And so, yeah, my first question is, how was Essen for you? Was this was the second Essen with the company? Yeah, did you notice a change from one Essen to the other?
Oh, thanks a lot for that introduction, Ben. First of all, I want to congratulate you on that pronunciation of my last name. I was very impressed. Problem. Sounded super Danish. So yeah, this was the second time here. Okay, so maybe I should rewind time a little bit. So for me, I've been going to Essen for a long time, since my first time was in 2013. So almost 10 years ago, or maybe it is 10 years ago, where I was a volunteer at the Plathead Games booth, demoing Mice and Mystics, which was the hot game at the time. So since then, I've gone a bunch of times. But last year, I went the first time there with a game I had worked on. So not just buying all the new hotness stuff, but also sort of putting something out there, which was very fun to get to see the fair from a different side. And last year we were there with Mindbug. It was the very first time the game sort of came into contact with the world. So we had printed like a small, what's it called? Like a small print run of 1,000 copies we had there. And that was it. So that was to sort of get people to talk about the game before we launched the Kickstarter shortly afterwards. We were really proud of the game, and we thought, okay, we're not a big known company, but if people actually play this game, they will see it's a pretty cool game. So last year we had lots of curious people come by the booth. Some of them said, oh, we heard this is something Richard Garfield worked on, so we definitely want to check that out. So having Richard work on the project definitely brought more eyes to it. But this year, you could feel a huge difference. So a lot of the people coming by the booth were people who already knew Mindbug. Some of them, they didn't want to buy anything. They just said, yeah, I already have the game. I have stuff from the Kickstarter. I just wanted to tell you that I really like the game. And so sort of meeting people who already played the game and were just enthusiastic about it and wanted to shake your hand or take a picture of you. That was really cool. It's you can feel a bit like a tiny rock star for a few days going to a game fair like that.
And so I'm always, because I go to Essen, and I don't take very good care of myself when I'm at Essen, but I'm like by the second day, I'm absolutely exhausted. And I see people who spend their entire time demoing games. I mean, the one thing about the board gaming hobby that I detest is learning and teaching games. Both things drive me up the wall. I mean, how exhausting is it to work for 4 days demoing a game?
It's pretty exhausting, I think, although I think going as a visitor is already also very exhausting. And you seem to, I can certainly recognize what you're saying about we seem to forget to take care of ourselves, like getting something to eat, to drink, go to the bathroom, or just take a break, go outside and sit for 10 minutes. You kind of forget all that stuff when you're heat of the moment. So it's definitely super exhausting at the end of the day. This year, we still had the masks on. So, it's a lot of time at the booth where you stand bent over a table. It's really loud and you're sort of shouting instructions in German at this German family trying to learn your game. It gets intense.
I mean, how do you deal with being asked the same stupid bloody question 20 times a day?
What is that question?
I don't know. I mean, I just imagine if you're demoing a game, that there must be just people asking stupid questions like sort of, oh, so I play the card face up, do I? And how do you not want to stab them by the third day of Essen?
Oh, I think it's not so bad. I mean, in general, we got quite different types of people playing the game. So you had people who had a background in like collectible card games or they played Magic, they play Keyforge, something like this. And for those kind of people, I have like a different script in my head to teach them the game. I can just say, oh, this works like flying or death touch or something. And I mean, I know which concept they're already familiar with. And for those, I don't really got a lot of stupid questions. And for the people who didn't play this type of game, I'm actually just really excited to have them, that this is the game that could possibly introduce them to this huge world of cool dueling card games. I mean, that's kind of a cool feeling. So maybe then you get a bit more patient with all the questions. I mean, I will say, having demoed the game so much, that at some point I wished we didn't do quite as many keywords. So, with the cards in the game, they can be poisonous, or they can be tough, or they can have frenzy. We have 5 different keywords, and I ended up spending a lot of the rules time just to explain those keywords to people.
And so let's go back and talk about the history of the game then, because the game... So I've played the game online with Richard Garfield, interestingly. That's a humble brag there, just for the podcast listeners.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I interviewed him for a show, and we were talking about it, and he said, "Oh, you can come and have a game with me." But so it's fair to say that a lot of the attention for the game was driven towards it because it was a dueling game that had been partly designed by Richard Garfield. So what's the origin of the game, and then how did you get Richard on board to help with the design of it?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that, and there are also some stuff there I would like to maybe clear up a little bit. So in the beginning of the game, all right, so winding all the way back, like 4 years ago and a few months, I got a little baby boy, and when he was half a year old, I mean, the first half year of his life, his wife was on parental leave, and then for the next half year, I was on parental leave. So I was half a year at home with my baby boy, and we took a lot of walks because he was screaming quite a lot, which I think some children do. But he really liked it when we took walks. So every day we took walks in the rain, in the snow, whatever. We always walked with the stroller. And during those walks, he would often doze off in his little stroller, and I would listen to a lot of podcasts. At that time, I was listening to a lot of game design podcasts, and one of them was the Nerd Lab podcast, which Marvin, my co-designer, he was the host of this podcast. So at this point, it was just this guy in my head who was talking about games, and at some point I wrote to him and asked him if we should do a game together, because he also seemed to like these kind of dueling card games, and he said sure. So we ended up starting Mindbot together at that point. Interestingly, the first prototype we played was not that far from the final product, which is unusual for games. Games usually you start at a quite terrible place, but you see some spark of something that could eventually become good in there, the diamond in the rough, and then you spend a lot of time polishing. Here we were actually already fairly close to something really good. I mean, it was fun in the beginning, and that's not usual when I do games, they are normally not fun the first time. I think it's the case for most designers. So we worked on that, tried playing around with some stuff, changing some stuff, new cards. And at some point, Richard was a guest on the podcast, Nerd Lab. So after the interview, Marvin, I don't know, maybe he had something extra spicy to eat that day or something. He was feeling a little bit cocky. So he was like, hey, Richard Garfield, would you like to see our game? And Richard was like, yeah, sure. He's a very nice guy. He was happy to look at it. And they played. And I think after the first game, Richard just said, yeah, that was pretty good. Can we play again? And they played again. And I think the next day, Richard ended up playing a bunch of times with someone else. And at the end, he asked us if we would like to collaborate on it going forward. And that's, of course, as designers, of course, you are really excited to work with someone as talented as Richard. But it's also, it's also tricky when you have a game that is sort of already fair point across its journey to becoming a final thing. But of course, we were very happy to work. So Richard and his partner Gaff came on board. We still work together every week, the four of us. Actually, just before this interview, we had a meeting. So a lot of people have asked me, like, okay, so Richard, he just put his name on the box so that you could sell some more copies. And they are surprised to hear that actually we're working together every week, still testing new expansion stuff, talking about the future, this kind of thing where we want the game to go. And actually getting Richard and Gaff on board was really good for the game. So a lot of stuff, even though the game was already good, actually ended up changing because of them. They had a unique perspective coming because they work with card games for so long. So as a concrete example, we had a card that would say, this card copies all the keywords from all the opposing cards. And that worked well, but they challenged us a bit. They said, okay, so what happens in the future when we do 2 new keywords that don't necessarily work well with copying? And we were like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not a good idea. So we ended up listing explicitly the keywords that copied it, which seemed not as elegant, but could save us some headaches in the future. So having this kind of, doing a product where you even think about what could come further down the line is something that I was not very experienced in as a new designer.
And so you brought the game to Kickstarter. I mean, how well did it do, and how surprised were you that the game did as well as it did?
It did really well, I think. And so we got I think we got more than 10,000 backers, which is a big number. So someone I was talking to someone, and they were like, "Oh yeah, okay, you got a lot of backers because you had Richard Garfield." But afterwards, I checked the numbers, and I think it was his Kickstarter that got the most backers ever. So certainly it could not just be him carrying the game,
right?
And so I think just this having like a small self-contained product that seemed like a fun game. We got some nice publicity out of Essen. That really helped us a lot.
And so what's the future then for the game? So you've been talking now about expansions. What can we expect in the Mindbug world?
It's a good question. What you normally expect in this type of game is we want more cards. That's what everyone is asking for. Come on, let us have more cards. I think what we're going to do is to do, and it's not totally set in stone yet, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we're going to do kind of standalone sets, like the base set. So, you can play with the base set, or you have this new standalone set you can play with, and then you can also mix up all the cards if that's how you prefer to play. But sort of offering a similar size of standalone box that has the same number of cards. And there are various mechanisms and stuff we are exploring. The challenge with this type of thing is one strength of the game is also that it's not too complicated. And it's one thing you're always very tempted to do as a designer, to say, okay, but if I can just add 10 more words on each card, I could do a lot of interesting stuff. And we are really trying not to do that. Let's see where we are in 10 years. I will be happy if the game is still alive and kicking at that time, but I would have a fear that the cards have become a little bit longer. So sort of trying to do interesting stuff, but to keep it short and sweet, like what the basic game has been successful with.
And so then what would be the ideal situation for you with this game? Of course, the obvious answer is that it's as big as Magic, but in a sort of plausible place, where would you like the game to be in 5 years?
It's a good question. One thing that I would love to see is to have more children play this game. So until now, we've mainly been exposed to, people like ourselves, people who go to Board Game Geek and are into designer board games and have disposable income. But we've seen children play and have a lot of fun with it and really enjoy these different type of creatures in the game. They are often mixes between animals, like we have the Kangasaurus Rex, like a kangaroo, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I would love to see more children play the game, and I think it will find a strong place there. So as a child myself, I played the Pokemon trading card game, which I enjoyed a lot. But it also has this aspect of collectability, and there's a slight feeling of gambling, opening these packets. And I mean, you have lots of parents that are always being asked to buy always more product. I think it could also be sort of a budget-friendly alternative where the children would just have access to all the cards. They wouldn't have to chase all these cards. And of course, it's being naive because it's also a part of the pleasure. But I would love to see more children play.
Excellent. Well, Christian, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for listening to the 5 Games for Doomsday news. To listen to past episodes, you can go to 5gamesfordoomsday.com, or to back the show, you can go to patreon.com/5G4D. So, join us again next month for some hot and spicy 5 Games for Doomsday news.